Homeless mom cries after Ronaldo's gift save her family. How will this story turn out? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. Maria pulled her coat tighter around her frail body, shielding herself from the biting wind as she pushed the shopping cart filled with all her worldly possessions. Her fingers were numb, her stomach empty, but none of that mattered as much as the little girl sleeping under a thin blanket in the cart. Her daughter, Sophia, was the only thing keeping her going. Ever since Maria had lost her home, her job, and the security she once knew, she had fought every single day to give Sophia a reason to smile. But the streets were cruel, and hope was slipping away. She had never imagined her life would come to this. A few years ago, she had a modest but comfortable home, a steady job as a seamstress, and dreams of opening her own tailor shop. But when her husband fell ill and medical bills piled up, everything crumbled. With no family to turn to, she did everything she could to keep a roof over their heads, but the eviction notice came faster than she could find another solution. Now they slept in abandoned buildings, survived on scraps, and relied on the kindness of strangers when there was any to be found. That morning, as Maria sat on a bench outside a grocery store, watching the world pass her by, she fought the urge to cry. The hunger was unbearable, but worse than that was the fear. The fear of another cold night, of Sophia getting sick, of never escaping the cycle of despair. As she looked down at her daughter's peaceful sleeping face, she made a silent promise. She would not give up. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden murmur from the people around her. A buzz of excitement spread through the small crowd gathered near the entrance of the store. Maria glanced up and saw a man stepping out of a sleek black car, his presence instantly commanding attention. She squinted against the bright morning sun and gasped when she realized who it was. Cristiano Ronaldo. She had seen his face on television screens in the store windows, his name whispered by excited fans whenever a game was playing. Even in the depths of her struggles, she knew who he was. But what was he doing here? Maria watched as Ronaldo greeted a few fans, taking quick photos and signing autographs with a warm smile. He exuded confidence, kindness, and an aura of success that seemed worlds apart from the life she now knew. As she turned away, ashamed of her appearance, she prayed Sophia wouldn't wake up and see the superstar she admired so much. But then, something unexpected happened. Ronaldo's gaze swept across the crowd, and for a fleeting moment, his eyes locked onto Maria. He saw the cart, the blanket-wrapped child, the worry etched deeply into Maria's tired face. Instead of looking away, he walked toward her. Maria's breath caught in her throat. She quickly wiped her face, trying to make herself look presentable, but there was no hiding the reality of her situation. As Ronaldo stopped in front of her, the world around them seemed to fade. "Hello," he said gently. Maria struggled to find her voice. "Hello," she managed. He glanced down at Sophia, then back at Maria. "Is she your daughter?" Maria nodded. "Yes, her name is Sophia." Ronaldo smiled at the sleeping child. "She's beautiful." He then looked back at Maria, his expression kind but filled with curiosity. "How long have you been out here?" Maria hesitated before answering. "A few months," she admitted. "I lost my home after my husband passed away. I've been trying to find work, but it's hard." Ronaldo studied her for a moment before he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Maria's eyes widened as he took out a thick stack of bills and handed them to her. "Here," he said. "This should help." Maria's hands trembled as she stared at the money. She couldn't remember the last time she had seen so much in one place. Her throat tightened. I can't accept this," she whispered. But Ronaldo simply smiled. "Yes, you can, and you will." Before she could protest further, he motioned for one of his assistants, who quickly stepped forward. "Take them to a hotel," Ronaldo instructed. "Make sure they have everything they need." Maria's knees felt weak. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "You don't have to," Ronaldo replied. "Just promise me one thing." Maria blinked back tears. "Anything. When you're back on your feet," he said, "help someone else who needs it." Maria nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Ronaldo gave her a reassuring smile before standing up. As he turned to leave, he paused, glancing down at Sophia once more. "She deserves a future," he said softly. "And so do you." Maria watched as he walked back toward his car, the weight of his kindness settling over her like a warm embrace. She clutched the money in her hands, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid. That night, Maria and Sophia slept in a warm bed, with full stomachs and a newfound hope. And it was all because a stranger, one of the most famous men in the world, had stopped and seen them. Maria woke up in the hotel room, momentarily confused by the soft mattress beneath her and the warmth of a proper blanket wrapped around her. For months, she had grown used to waking up cold, stiff, and terrified of what the day would bring. But now, as she turned her head, she saw Sophia still sleeping peacefully beside her small face relaxed in a way Maria hadn't seen in a long time. For the first time in months, her daughter had slept without shivering, without the fear of being woken up by the harsh reality of their situation. Maria sat up slowly, her fingers brushing against the soft fabric of the bed. It felt unreal. She looked around the room, taking the clean walls, the fresh sheets, the simple but elegant furnishings. It was nothing extravagant, but to her, it was paradise. A knock at the door made her jump. She quickly pulled on the robe provided by the hotel and opened the door cautiously. A man in a suit stood outside, smiling warmly. "Good morning, Ms. Maria. My name is Marco. I work with Mr. Ronaldo's team." Maria's heart skipped a beat. Hello," she said nervously, gripping the doorframe. Marco held out a small envelope. "Mr. Ronaldo asked me to check in on you and Sophia. He also wanted you to have this." Maria took the envelope hesitantly and opened it. Inside was another stack of cash, along with a neatly folded piece of paper. She unfolded it with shaking hands and read the words written in elegant handwriting. "Maria, I hope you and Sophia are safe and comfortable. This isn't just for shelter or food. It's for a fresh start. There's a job waiting for you if you're willing to take it. Marco will explain more. Wishing you both all the best. Cristiano." Maria clutched the letter to her chest, overwhelmed by emotion. She had expected a single act of kindness, but this was something more. She looked up at Marco, her voice barely above a whisper. "A job." Marco nodded. "Yes. Mr. Ronaldo has connections with a cafe here in the city. The owner is willing to give you a chance as a kitchen assistant. It's an honest job with decent pay, and if you work hard, there's potential for more." Maria's knees nearly buckled. A job? A real chance. Not just a handout, but an opportunity to rebuild her life. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." Marco smiled. "You don't have to say anything. Just say yes." Maria turned back toward the room, looking at Sophia still curled up under the blankets. Her daughter deserved stability, warmth, a future. Maria had fought for so long, but now for the first time, she felt like she wasn't fighting alone. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I'll take it." Marco beamed. "Wonderful. Get some rest today. Tomorrow morning, I'll take you to the cafe and introduce you to the owner." As Marco left, Maria sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the letter once more. She traced the ink with her fingertips, still unable to believe this was happening. When Sophia woke up, Maria pulled her daughter into a tight hug, whispering, "We're going to be okay, baby. I promise." The next morning, Maria dressed in the best clothes she had, simple jeans and a clean blouse provided by the hotel. She tied her hair back, took Sophia's hand, and met Marco in the hotel lobby. They took a short drive to a small but charming cafe, where the scent of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes greeted them at the entrance. "You must be Maria," she said warmly, extending her hand. "I'm Clara, the owner." Maria shook her hand, nerves fluttering in her stomach. "It's nice to meet you." Clara led her inside, showing her the kitchen, the storage areas, a small but cozy dining space. "We're a small team here," she explained, "but we take care of each other. If you work hard and stay committed, you'll always have a place here." Maria swallowed back emotion and nodded. "I will. I promise." And just like that, she had a job. The first few days were tough. Maria was rusty, her hands unsteady from months of hardship, but she was determined. She scrubbed dishes, prepped ingredients, watched and learned from the other staff. Clara was patient, guiding her, encouraging her. At night, Maria and Sophia returned to the hotel, exhausted but hopeful. For the first time in so long, Maria had a reason to believe in tomorrow. Then, one evening, after a long shift, she received a call. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone. Maria? Her heart nearly stopped. She knew that voice. Mr. Ronaldo, she whispered in disbelief. A chuckle came through the line. I hear you're doing well. Maria wiped her eyes, struggling to hold back her tears. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, he said. Just keep going. Maria clutched the phone, her voice breaking. You saved my life. No, Maria, Ronaldo replied. You save your own. And in that moment, Maria knew this was only the beginning. Maria woke up the next morning with a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in months, she wasn't waking up to fear, uncertainty, or the endless cycle of survival. She had a job, a real job. She had spent so long trying to keep her daughter safe that she had forgotten what it felt like to work toward a future. But now, because of one man's kindness, she had a second chance. She got ready quickly, dressed Sophia in the clothes provided by the hotel, and made sure she had a warm breakfast before walking her to a small daycare that Marco had helped arrange. It was a place for children of working mothers, offering safety, education, and care while parents worked. Maria was hesitant at first. She had never left Sophia anywhere before. But when she saw the bright smile on her daughter's face as she ran to play with the other children, she knew it was the right choice. Maria hurried to the cafe, eager to prove herself. The scent of fresh bread and coffee filled the air as she stepped inside, tying on her apron. Clara, the owner, smiled warmly as Maria joined the kitchen staff. Ready for another day? She asked. Maria nodded. More than ready. She worked harder than ever, absorbing everything like a sponge. She learned how to knead dough properly, how to time the oven perfectly, how to plate meals with precision. The other employees quickly grew fond of her, impressed by her determination. Weeks passed, and Maria started to feel like she truly belonged. Her hands, once stiff from the cold and hardship, now moved with confidence. She was no longer just surviving, she was rebuilding. One evening, after the cafe had closed, Clara pulled Maria aside. I've been watching you, she said. Maria's stomach twisted. Did I do something wrong? Clara chuckled. No, quite the opposite. You have a gift, Maria. The way you work with food, the care you put into every dish, it's special. Maria flushed and used a praise. I just want to do my best. Clara nodded. And that's why I want to offer you something more. How would you feel about training as a chef? Maria's breath caught. A chef? You have the potential, Clara said. It won't be easy, but I can teach you. Maria's mind raced. She had never dared to dream of something like this. She had spent so long thinking of herself as just a woman who had lost everything. But what if she could be more? She thought of Sophia, of the life she wanted to give her. She thought of Cristiano Ronaldo, the man who had seen something in her when no one else did. Maria took a deep breath and met Clara's gaze. I want to learn. Clara smiled. Then we start tomorrow. That night, Maria returned to the hotel, exhausted but exhilarated. As she tucked Sophia into bed, she whispered, Mommy's going to do something great. Sophia yawned and snuggled into her pillow. You already are, Mommy. The training was intense. Maria woke up earlier, stayed later, pushed herself harder than ever before. She learned techniques, perfected recipes, and worked through failures with resilience. One evening, after weeks of training, Clara handed Maria a plate of food and said, Serve this to our special guest. Maria took the plate, confused. Special guest. Clara nodded toward a table in the corner. Maria turned, and her heart nearly stopped. Cristiano Ronaldo was sitting there, watching her with a knowing smile. Her hands trembled as she walked toward him, placing the plate down carefully. Mr. Ronaldo, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He gestured to the food. Did you make this? Maria nodded. Ronaldo picked up his fork, took a bite, and closed his eyes. A slow smile spread across his face. This, he said, is incredible. Maria let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her. Ronaldo looked up at her. I had a feeling you would do something amazing. Tears pricked at Maria's eyes. I wouldn't be here without you. Ronaldo shook his head. You would have found a way. I just made it happen faster. He wiped his mouth and leaned forward. Tell me, Maria, what's next? Maria blinked. Next? Yes, Ronaldo said. You've come this far. But what do you really want? Maria hesitated. The truth was, she had been so focused on surviving that she hadn't dared to dream beyond this moment. But as she stood in the cafe, surrounded by warmth, by the people who had become her second family, she realized she did know the answer. "I want to have my own restaurant one day," she admitted. "Somewhere people can come not just for food, but for comfort. A place where no one ever has to feel invisible." Ronaldo smiled. "Then let's make it happen." Maria's breath hitched. "What?" "I believe in you," he said simply. "And I want to invest in your future." Maria felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "I can't," she started, but Ronaldo held up a hand. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is belief. In a year, I want to come back and eat in your restaurant. Will you be ready?" Maria swallowed hard, emotion overwhelming her. "Yes," she whispered. Ronaldo grinned. "Good. Then let's get to work." Maria barely slept that night. The thought of owning her own restaurant felt surreal, like a dream too big to grasp. Yet here she was, given an opportunity that she never could have imagined. Cristiano Ronaldo believed in her, and now she had to believe in herself. The next morning, she arrived at the cafe with renewed determination. Clara, already knowing what had happened, pulled her aside and squeezed her hands. "This is your chance, Maria. You're ready for this." Maria nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it yet. But she had come too far to let doubt stop her now. She threw herself into training even harder. Clara, along with a few other chefs, guided her through everything she needed to know about running a restaurant, from menu planning to budgeting to customer service. As weeks turned into months, Maria started sketching ideas for her own place. She wanted it to be a bakery and cafe, a place where people could find warmth not just in the food, but in the atmosphere. A place where those who had nowhere else to go would always be welcome. One evening, after a long shift, she returned to the hotel to find an envelope waiting for her at the front desk. Confused, she opened it. Inside was a letter and a key. The letter was from Ronaldo. "Maria, you've proven yourself in ways I always knew you would. Now it's time for you to take the next step. This key belongs to a small restaurant space in the city. It's yours if you're ready for it. I'll be coming back soon for that meal you promised me. Make it worth it." Ronaldo. Maria's hand shook as she held the key. It was real. This was happening. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the letter to her chest. She had spent so long struggling, so long believing she was stuck in a cycle of survival. But now she had a future. A real future. And it was time to claim it. The next day, Maria visited the restaurant space. It was small, but it had everything she needed: an open kitchen, a dining area, and a cozy warmth that she could already picture filled with life. Clara came with her, running her hands along the counters with an approving nod. "It's perfect," she said. Maria exhaled deeply. "It will be." And so, the real work began. She spent every waking hour preparing for the opening. She gathered a small team, some former co-workers from the cafe, a few young aspiring chefs, and even Marco, the hotel clerk who had first given her a job lead. She poured her heart into the menu, designing dishes inspired by her childhood, by the warmth of home, by the meals that had once brought her comfort when she had nothing else. The bakery section would serve fresh bread and pastries every morning. The cafe would offer warm meals, homemade soups, and rich coffee. And most importantly, there would always be a section where those in need could eat for free, no questions asked. Because she knew what it was like to be hungry, to feel invisible. And she would never let anyone else feel that way if she could help it. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Walls were painted, tables arranged, the kitchen stocked with the finest ingredients she could afford. Maria worked tirelessly, making sure everything was perfect. Then, finally, the day arrived. The grand opening of Casa Esperanza, House of Hope. The small cafe was bustling with energy. Friends, supporters, and locals gathered outside, eager to see what this new place was all about. The sign above the door gleamed in the morning light. Maria stood at the entrance, taking a deep breath. This was it. With a trembling hand, she unlocked the doors. People flooded in, filling the seats, browsing the menu. The air was thick with the smell of freshly baked bread, sizzling butter, and rich coffee. Her team worked seamlessly, serving customers, plating dishes, keeping the cafe running smoothly. And then, just as the lunchtime rush settled, the door opened again. The cafe fell silent. Cristiano Ronaldo had arrived. Dressed simply, he walked in with his signature smile, looking around with admiration. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and stepped forward. "Welcome to Casa Esperanza, Mr. Ronaldo." Ronaldo chuckled. "I was promised a meal. I hope it's good." Maria grinned. "I think you'll like it." She led him to a table, her hands steady as she prepared his dish herself. She carefully plated a meal that told her story, a dish that had comforted her on her hardest nights, transformed with everything she had learned over the past year. When she placed it in front of him, she whispered, "This meal kept me alive when I had nothing. Now, I want to share it with you." Ronaldo took a bite, closed his eyes, and nodded slowly. "Perfect," he said. The cafe erupted in applause. Maria let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Ronaldo looked up at her, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Maria." Maria smiled, blinking back tears. "We did it." The rest of the afternoon was a whirlwind. Customers raved about the food, the warmth, the sense of home Casa Esperanza provided. The free meal section filled with those in need, and no one left hungry. That night, as Maria locked up the cafe, she stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in. She had done it. She had gone from begging for food to feeding an entire community. And all because one man had believed in her. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The days that followed the grand opening of Casa Esperanza were nothing short of magical. Word spread quickly about the new cafe that not only served delicious homemade food but also helped those in need. Customers came in droves, some out of curiosity, others because they had heard about Maria's incredible journey. Every morning, the bakery shelves were lined with fresh bread and pastries, filling the air with warmth and comfort. The cafe tables were always full, buzzing with conversations, laughter, and the clinking of plates. But for Maria, the most rewarding part was the free meal section. Every day, people who had once been invisible to the world, homeless mothers, struggling families, elderly individuals with nowhere to go, walked into her cafe and were greeted with kindness, dignity, and a warm meal. No one was judged. No one was turned away. Because Maria understood better than anyone what it was like to be in their position. One afternoon, as she wiped down the counter, she noticed a young boy standing near the entrance, his clothes worn, his small hands gripping the edge of his tattered jacket. He looked hesitant, unsure if he was allowed to come in. Maria immediately walked over with a warm smile. "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" she asked gently. The boy nodded, his eyes filled with uncertainty. Maria knelt to his level. "Come inside. Let's get you something to eat, okay?" The boy hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside. She led him to a seat and brought him a plate of warm food. As he took the first bite, his shoulders relaxed, and for the first time since he had arrived, he smiled. A lump formed in Maria's throat. She had been him once. Later that night, as she locked up the cafe, she checked her phone and saw a new message. It was from Cristiano Ronaldo. "I saw the news about your cafe. You're making me proud, Maria." She smiled, wiping away a stray tear before typing a response. "I learned from the best." Weeks turned into months, and Casa Esperanza continued to thrive. The cafe wasn't just a place to eat, it became a community hub. People who had been given free meals often returned when they were back on their feet, offering to help in any way they could. Some volunteered in the kitchen. Others donated money to support the free meal program. The kindness Maria had received was now being passed forward, growing into something bigger than she ever imagined. Then, one evening, as Maria was rolling out dough in the kitchen, she heard the cafe door open just before closing time. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the front, only to freeze in place. Standing in the entrance was Ronaldo. But he wasn't alone. Beside him was a well-dressed man, holding a folder. Maria's heart pounded as she stepped forward. "Mr. Ronaldo, I didn't expect to see you again so soon." Ronaldo grinned. "I like checking in on my investments." Maria laughed, shaking her head. "You're more than welcome anytime." He nodded toward the man beside him. "This is Marco. He works with me on special projects. And we have something to discuss with you." Maria frowned slightly, but gestured for them to sit. Once they were settled, Ronaldo leaned forward. "You built something special here, Maria, and I think it's time to take it further." Maria blinked. What do you mean? Marco opened the folder and slid a document across the table. We want to expand Casa Esperanza. More locations, more people helped. We want you to lead the project. Maria stared at the papers, her hands trembling. You mean, you want to open more cafes like this? Ronaldo nodded. Not just cafes, community kitchens. Places where people can eat, work, and rebuild their lives. You've already proven you can change lives, Maria. Now, we want to help you do it on a bigger scale. Maria covered her mouth, overwhelmed. She had never imagined anything like this. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Ronaldo smiled. Say yes. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she reached for the pen and signed a contract. Yes, she said. And just like that, her journey had come full circle. She had once been the woman begging for help. Now, she was the one giving it. Months later, as Maria stood in front of the second Casa Esperanza location, she felt the same nervous excitement she had on opening day. The cafe was bigger this time, with an expanded kitchen, more seating, and an entire section dedicated to free meals for those in need. Volunteers bustled inside, preparing for the grand opening. And just like before, a crowd had gathered outside, waiting to step into a place that had already changed so many lives. As she took a deep breath, she felt a familiar presence beside her. Ronaldo, dressed simply, hands in his pockets, watching with quiet pride. You did this, he said. Maria smiled, wiping her eyes. We did this. And as the doors to the new Casa Esperanza opened, Maria knew one thing for certain. Kindness never ends, and neither would she.